When I was 21, I was broken, living in a small one-room apartment in the middle of a very cold winter. I was working on a construction job during the day and couldn't afford to go out of my apartment in the evenings where at least it was warm. So, I had a lot of time to think. One night, as I sat at my small kitchen table, I had a great flash of awareness that changed my life. I suddenly realized that everything that happened to me for the rest of my life was going to be up to me. No one else was ever going to help me. No one was coming to the rescue. I was thousands of miles from home, where I'd grown up, and had no intentions of going back for a long time. I saw clearly at that moment that if anything in my life were going to change, it would have to begin with me. If I didn't change, nothing else would change. I was responsible. I still remember that moment. It was like a first parachute jump. It was both scary and exhilarating. There I was, standing on the edge of life, and I decided to jump. From that moment onward, I accepted that I was in charge of my life. I knew that if I wanted things to be different, I would have to be different. Everything was up to me. Sadly enough, most people never do this. I've met countless men and women in their 40s and 50s who are still grumbling and complaining about earlier unhappy experiences and still blaming their problems on other people and circumstances. The greatest enemies of success and happiness are negative emotions of all kinds. It is negative emotions that hold you down, tire you out, and take away all your joy in life. One of your most important goals, if you want to be truly happy and successful, is to free yourself from negative emotions. Fortunately, this can be done if you learn how. The negative emotions of fear, self-pity, envy, jealousy, feelings of inferiority, and ultimately, anger, are mostly caused by 4 factors. Once you identify and remove these factors from your thinking, your negative emotions stop automatically. The first of the 4 root causes of negative emotions is justification. You can only be negative as long as you can justify to yourself and others that you are entitled to be angry or upset for some reason. This is why angry people are continually explaining and elaborating on the reasons for their negative feelings. However, if you cannot justify your negativity, you cannot be angry. The second cause of negative emotions is rationalization. When you rationalize, you attempt to give a socially acceptable explanation for an otherwise socially unacceptable act. You rationalize to explain away or to put a favorable light on something that you have done that you feel bad or unhappy about. You excuse your behavior or actions by creating an explanation that sounds good, even though you know that you were an active agent in whatever occurred. You often create complex ways of putting yourself in the right by explaining that your behavior is pretty quite acceptable. All things considered, this rationalizing keeps your negative emotions alive. Rationalization and justification always require that you make someone or something else the source or cause of your problem. You cast yourself in the role of the victim and make the other person or organization into the oppressor or the bad guy. The third cause of negative emotions is an overconcern or hypersensitivity to the way that others treat you. For some people, their entire self-image is determined by the way others speak to them, talk to them, or about them, or even look at them. They have little sense of personal value or self-worth apart from the opinions of others. And if those opinions are negative for any reason, real or imagined, the victim immediately experiences anger, embarrassment, shame, feelings of inferiority, and even depression, self-pity, and despair. This explains why psychologists say that almost everything we do is to earn the respect of others or at least to avoid losing their respect. The fourth cause of negative emotions, and the worst of all, is blaming. When I draw the negative emotions tree in my seminars, I illustrate the trunk of the tree as the propensity to blame other people for our problems. Once you cut down the trunk of the tree, all the fruits of the tree, all the other negative emotions, die immediately. Just as when you jerk the plug out of the wall that lights up the Christmas lights in the tree, all the lights go out instantly. The antidote for negative emotions of all kinds is for you to accept complete responsibility for your situation. The very act of accepting responsibility short-circuits and cancels out any negative emotions you may be experiencing. It's only when you free yourself from negative emotions by taking complete responsibility that you can begin to set and achieve goals in every area of your life. It's only when you are free mentally and emotionally that you can begin to channel your energies and enthusiasms in a forward direction. On the other hand, once you accept total responsibility for your life, there are no limits on what you can be, do, and have. From now on, refuse to blame anyone for anything, past, present, or future. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. If you make a mistake, say, "I'm sorry," and get busy rectifying the situation. To keep your mind positive, refuse to criticize, complain about, or condemn other people for anything. Every time you criticize someone else, complain about something you don't like, or condemn someone else for something they have done or not done, you trigger feelings of negativity and anger within yourself, and you are the one who suffers. Your negativity doesn't affect the other person at all. Being angry with someone is allowing him or her to control your emotions and often the entire quality of your life at long distance. This is just plain silly. Remember, positive emotions of happiness, excitement, love, and enthusiasm make you feel more powerful and confident. Once you decide to accept complete responsibility for yourself, your situation, and for everything that happens to you, you can turn confidently toward your work and the affairs of your life. You become the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. In a study done in New York some years ago, researchers found that the top 3% of people in every field had a special attitude that set them apart from average performers in their industries. It was this: they viewed themselves as self-employed throughout their careers, no matter who signed their paychecks. They saw themselves as responsible for their companies, exactly as if they owned the companies personally. You should do the same. If there's anything in your life that you don't like, you are responsible. You are responsible for the consequences of your actions and your behaviors. You're where you are and what you are today because you have decided to be there. In a large sense, you are earning today exactly what you have decided to earn, no more, no less. If you're not happy with your current income, decide to earn more. Set it as a goal, make a plan, and then get busy doing what you need to do to earn what it is you want to earn. Just as the president of a corporation is responsible for the strategy and activities of that corporation, you are also responsible for the personal strategic planning of your own life and career. You are responsible for overall management, strategy setting, goals, making plans, establishing measures, and performing to get results. You are responsible for achieving certain outputs, for the quality and quantity of the work that you produce, and the results you are expected to get. As president, you are responsible for marketing strategy, for self-promotion and advancement, for creating your image and packaging yourself to be able to sell yourself for the very highest price in a competitive market. You are responsible for financial strategy, for deciding how much of your services you want to sell, and how much you want to earn, how rapidly you want to grow your income year by year, how much you want to save and invest, and how much you want to be worth when you retire. You're responsible for your people's strategy and your relationships, both at home and at work. One piece of advice I give my students is to choose your boss with care. Your choice of a boss is going to have a major impact on how much you earn, how fast you get ahead, and how happy you will be at your job. By the same token, your choice of a mate and friends will have as much or more to do with your success and happiness than any other decisions you make. Finally, as president, you are in complete charge of personal research and development, personal training, and learning. It is up to you to determine the talents, skills, abilities, and core competencies you will need to earn the kind of money you want to earn in the months and years ahead. It is then your responsibility to make the investment and take the time to learn and develop these skills. Refuse to whine and complain about things that happened in the past which cannot be changed. Instead, orient yourself toward the future and think of what you want and where you're going. Above all, think about your goals. The very act of thinking about your goals makes you positive and purposeful. Once more, there's a direct relationship between the amount of responsibility you accept and the amount of control you feel. The more you say, "I am responsible," the more of an internal locus of control you develop within yourself, and the more powerful and confident you feel. There's also a direct relationship between responsibility and happiness. The more responsibility you accept, the happier you become. It seems that all three, responsibility, control, and happiness, go together. The more responsibility you accept, the greater amount of control you feel you have, the happier and more confident you become. When you feel positive and in control of your life, you will set bigger and more challenging goals for yourself. You will also have the drive and determination to achieve them. You will feel as though you hold your whole life in your own hands and that you can make it into whatever you decide. The starting point of goal setting is for you to realize that you have virtually unlimited potential to be, have, or do anything you really want in life if you simply want it badly enough and are willing to work long enough and hard enough to achieve it. The second part of goal setting is for you to accept complete responsibility for your life and for everything that happens to you, with no blaming and no excuses. With these two concepts clearly in mind, that you have unlimited potential on the one hand and that you are completely responsible on the other, you are now ready to move to the next step, which is to begin designing your ideal future. Now, here are 3 things you can do immediately to put these ideas into action. First, identify your biggest problem or source of negativity in life today. In what ways are you responsible for this situation? Second, see yourself as the president of your own company. How would you act differently if you owned 100% of the shares of your current company? Third, resolve today to stop blaming anyone else for anything and instead accept complete responsibility in every area of your life. What actions should you be taking? Music. Many years ago, I started off poor, started off broke. Music. Broke. I started off pretty stupid. I've done a good deal of traveling, and over the years, I began to study the subject of success. And I had one simple idea that came upon me in my late teens, and I think it was the most important idea that I've ever had. It was simply this, that if you study successful people and you do what they do, you'll be more successful. And if you study unsuccessful people and you avoid doing what they do, then you will not be a failure. Then one of the things I found is that if you study success, you begin to internalize success principles. And if you practice proven success principles, and if you do what successful men and women have done throughout history, then you will be successful too. It's such a remarkable discovery, but it has been worth a fortune to me. Now here's another discovery. 95% of what you do comes from habit. And if you do something repeatedly over and over again, what do you develop? You develop new habits. So you can learn the habits of highly successful people. You can learn the habits of highly paid people. You can learn the habits of people who get into the top 10% and into the top 20%. And you can learn them with practice because all habits are learnable, all skills are learnable. There is no limit to what you can accomplish if you just simply dedicate yourself to developing the habits of other successful people. So the idea that you can short-circuit this, that you can just jump to the head of the line with no work, it's an idea that people fall for all the time, just poor suckers. And what happens is it never works, it's not possible. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams and act as though it were impossible to fail. And this brings us to the most important part. If I can just summarize in 1 minute, it is this. Your true beliefs are only and always expressed in your actions. It is not what you say or what you intend that tells what you believe, but only what you do. Your actions are always the true measure. And the interesting thing that we've learned in behavioral psychology is that if you do not feel self-confident, courageous, consistent, clear, and so on, if you don't feel like it, and most of us start off not feeling like it, if you will pretend as though you have the quality already, the feelings will generate the actions, and the actions will generate the feelings. If you will act, walk, talk, and live by the same principles and do the same things that successful men and women do, even if you doubt yourself in the initial stages, eventually you will come to the point where you actually feel to the bottom of your soul like a successful, positive, confident, cheerful, optimistic, unstoppable human being. And that's the key. Act the part until you feel the part. Do what successful people do and do it over and over again until it becomes ingrained as a habit. And I did 2 things which really had a profound effect on my career. Number 1 is when I heard a new thing, I would immediately try it out. I noticed that many other people heard the same things, but they took no action. They wouldn't take any action at all. Whereas when I heard something new, I would run out and I would try it out quickly. Number 2, the thing that I learned is that nothing works. Even the best ideas don't work, at least they don't work the first time. And sometimes they don't work the first 5 times or the first 10 times. So I made a resolution that if I heard a good idea, I would try it 5 or 10 times before I passed judgment. And for a set of people, think about what they want and how to get it. Most of the time, they think about what they want and how to get it. Clarity is the starting point of all success. It means clarity of thinking. It means thinking clearly, and it extends from thinking clearly to a series of other things. With regard to clarity, it means the ability to determine exactly what it is that you want to be, have, or do in life. And the more I study successful men and women, the more I find that every single one of them, the top 5%, are very clear about where it is they're going and what it is they want to accomplish. And when I look at unsuccessful men and women, or men and women who seem to be unhappy and floundering, I find that almost invariably they have a very, very limited sense of direction, sometimes no sense of direction at all. Now, the comfort zone is, we become comfortable doing what we're doing, and we are uncomfortable not doing that. Remember, we try to move from discomfort toward comfort, but we don't try to move from comfort toward discomfort. Trying something new, setting a new goal, committing ourselves to a whole new course of action or study is a very comforting thing. And what we do is we pull back into our comfort zone. So the comfort zone is the great enemy of success. It keeps us in a homeostatic situation. It keeps us constant with our previous behaviors. It keeps us at a low level of accomplishment. In order to break out of the comfort zone, we've got to set bigger goals. We've got to set big, hairy, audacious goals that really wake us up, that are impossible to accomplish at our current level of accomplishment. Now, I was reading something in philosophy a couple of years ago, and it said there are only certain things that a person can do for themselves. A person can only breathe for themselves. A person can only eat for themselves. A person can only drink for themselves. A person can only learn for themselves. So the one thing that only you can do is to learn. No one else can do it for you. No one else can give it to you. Only you can learn new things through hard work. One of the people on the program, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, who had become successful as a singer, he said, "Isn't that wonderful that you become so successful as a singer?" She said, "Yes, it's wonderful." She said, "But when I'm up on stage in Las Vegas, I'm making $50,000 a week or whatever it happens to be." He says, "Nobody sees the 16 years that I spent traveling around, living in a van, singing in cheap honky-tonks where people throw up on their piano and get drunk on the floor in front. Nobody sees the 16 years of living on the road, living at an average of less than $5,000 a year. What they see is the person up there on the stage. But every single great success was at one time a failure. And they failed and failed and failed and failed and failed over and over again. And all great successes are a story of failure. Outstanding success. Boy, ain't he lucky? Isn't that right? Boy, he was lucky. He sure had the right connections. So consistency is important. And even if you don't see yourself getting the results, be consistent. Keep working. Steady. 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 Knowing that you're accumulating. You're putting yourself on the side of the angels when you're working consistently. Nature is neutral. Nature doesn't say you'll be successful and you not and you a little bit more. It's blind. Nature is neutral. Nature says if you will do what other successful people do, you get the same results. That's it. Whether you come from a farm or a poor family or you have no education. I thought that you had to have good grades in school in order to be successful. And then later, I thought that you had to have a university education in order to be successful. And then later, I thought that successful people are people who are somehow better than you and they somehow have unique talents. That somehow the gods have descended from Olympus and touched them on the heads. But one of the things that I found is that nobody is better than you or I when you see men or women accomplishing great things. They're not better than you and they're not different from you or they're just doing things in a different way. You look at a person you went to school with who's now doing surgery as a doctor. The person's the same person, except that they've learned how to do surgery. You look at a person who you went to school with who is now an outstanding success in a particular field. All they've done is learned how to be a success in that field. And consistency, there's a law of accumulation in the universe. If I can pass this on, a law of accumulation that says that even though you do 100 things or 1,000 things that you don't see, eventually they accumulate and they gather a force of their own. That every single great accomplishment in life is the result of thousands of minor accomplishments that nobody ever sees. Interesting point. The single greatest source of self-made millionaires in America. You know what industry it is? Can you guess? You wouldn't believe it. Dry cleaning. Dry cleaning shops are the greatest single source. Why? Industry that's contributed more self-made millionaires than any other industry. Dry cleaning shops. Now, the key to this, if you want to become wealthy, I'm going to tell you something that if you want to be wealthy in life, if you wish to become very wealthy, if you wish to become a millionaire, you can do it if you're willing to pay the price. But most people become millionaires by offering a good or service that people use all the time. And they offer it just a little bit better. They do it just a little bit faster. They put a little bit more grace or finesse into what they're doing. They handle it, they wrap it, they are more polite. The restaurant that has people coming back to it may have food that's only 5% different, but it's the way that people handle it that's so different. You can do anything you want in life. All you have to do is find an idea that's 10 to new. And you'll find that if you flood your mind, read magazines, read books, ask questions, ask why people are doing things the way they're doing, look for ideas, keep your mind open and flexible, ask questions. Remember, one new idea is all you need to start a fortune. And within every single person here, you have 4 ideas, an average of 4 ideas per year, driving to and from work, any one of which will make you a fortune, any one of which will make you wealthy. How many times? I can prove it to you. Want me to prove it to you? How many times have you been going about your daily business and you see the need for a product or service, and you said, I wonder why somebody doesn't produce that? And about 2 or 3 years later, then you say, well, it can't be any good because I thought of it. After all, I grabbed some Groucho Marx when he resigned from a club once. He said, I wouldn't stay in a club that would have me for a member. People like me, remember? So we used to get those ideas and we say, well, it can't be any good because I thought of it. And then 2 or 3 years later, a company comes out with that idea, or some company, and makes $1 million. And you say, I thought of that idea 2 or 3 years ago. Every single person here has had that experience. What you have to do is trust your ideas. Trust your idea. If you decide that you're going to earn a certain amount of money, that you're going to achieve a certain level of wealth, that you're going to achieve a certain life estate, and you program that into your subconscious mind, and you then turn it over to your intuition, you will get the ideas, the insights, the inspirations necessary to achieve your goals. And that's the only difference between very wealthy, successful people and the average person, is that they simply follow their intuition. They're not smarter, they're not different, they're not more educated, they're not more talented. They just follow that inner guide. Why are poor people poor? Because they think poorly. It's really important that you realize that you have everything that you need within you right now to achieve everything you could possibly dream of in life. That success is predictable if you commit yourself to becoming excellent. It does a whole lot of other things within your mind. But if you commit yourself to becoming excellent, it changes everything about you. And only the top 5% or 10% are excellent. Okay, 95% of your success will be determined by how clear you are about what you want. Most people are unclear. They don't really know. If you say to a person, what do you want? They'll say, well, I want to be rich. Or they say, well, I want to be happy. Or they say, I want a happy home. Or, I want to travel. But these are not goals. These are just wishes. I call these cigarette smoke goals. That's where you take a puff of a cigarette and you exhale, but it just disappears. Most people are organizing their lives around cigarette smoke goals. They just come through their minds and they just disappear like the sound of distant music. It comes and goes, but successful people are very clear about their goals. Many years ago, I was a karate student. I was also a karate instructor, and I competed in 3 international championships. And one of the things that I learned from my best karate instructors, and I studied under 6 world champions, is they told me that when you fight, always move forward. Even if you're only moving forward half an inch at a time, just always move forward. They said when you're moving forward, 100% of your attention is forward. But if you're moving backward, even a half an inch at a time, half of your attention is always behind you and where you're going. So always move forward. Always have the daring to go forward. Whenever you have a choice of either staying still and playing it safe or moving forward, move forward. Not because you'll necessarily succeed every time, but because it reinforces and cements the habit of moving forward. Most people, when they have a choice of moving forward or staying, playing it safe, play it safe. But I think General Douglas MacArthur said there's no security in life, only opportunity. Life is very perverse in a way because the more we seek security, the less we have it. And the more we seek opportunity, the more we have security. Helen Keller said this beautifully. She said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. That the tendency, she said in the earlier parts of this statement, she said the tendency to seek security is the low road to failure. That courage is absolutely essential. And one of the things that I used to think is that if you were really courageous, if eventually you got to the point where you weren't afraid. I'm going to tell you something that if you're not a little bit afraid, at least 3 or 4 nights a week, you're not trying hard enough. If you're not falling on your face over and over again, if you're not trembling when you go to sleep with your heart pounding, then what is happening is you're not trying hard enough. You're living too far within your potential already. Successful people live on the outside edge of what they're capable of. And it's always a little bit scary on the outside. Because we all have feelings of uncertainty. We all have fears. We all have doubts that hold us back. But the brave person is simply the person who moves forward and keeps taking the chance. You cannot imagine a successful person without courage. You cannot imagine a successful person without the courage to face and confront their fears and to move forward. In my experience, the fear of failure is the greatest single reason for failure in adult life. The fear of failure, the fear of making a mistake, of losing our money, our time, our effort, is what paralyzes us and holds us back. But the fear of failure is a habit which can be counteracted by the habit of courage. And if we don't overcome that fear of failure, then we'll just be like the 80%, 90% that do not fulfill their potential. See, the wonderful thing is only a few percentage of people fulfill their potential in any generation. And we can join those people simply by deciding to do so and doing what the other people do. As simple as that. We decide to become an engineer. What do you study? You study engineering. You want to become a better cook. What do? You study cooking. Do you try to do it all by yourself? No, you get cookbooks, you take classes, and so on and so forth. If you want to be successful, if you want to fulfill your potential, study the men and women who are fulfilling their potential and just do what they do. Finally, with regard to courage, the greatest expression of courage is to persist in the face of adversity. To persist when things really get rough. To be able to pick yourself up and pick yourself up over and over again. And believe me, if you decide to go for the goal in your life, you're going to get knocked down over and over and over and over again. Every single week, you're going to have heartaches, disappointments, frustrations, setbacks, and obstacles. But without those obstacles, no success is possible. You see, the only way we can be successful is if we develop momentum. And we cannot develop the momentum unless we are struggling with obstacles. And struggle with adversity goes hand in hand with all great success. What most people do is they back away from adversity. But if you want to see if you're a brave person, what they call the 4 o'clock in the morning courage. When things go completely to pieces, when things are the worst, when your very best deal falls apart and your rent is late and you're tired and you're sick and everybody is mad at you, your car doesn't work, then it's the person that picks themselves up and says, nothing is going to stop me.